the last 2 days were exciting if you're a baseball fan, if you're a baseball transaction nerd like me. It was a lot of fun. There were a lot of trades. But the reality is there were no superstars traded. None of the best players got traded. The best pitcher that probably got traded, at least based on the season they're having this year, is Jack Flaherty. Am I disappointed the Guardians couldn't get him? Yes. Does it seem like the package the Dodgers ultimately gave up to get him when other pitchers, at least on paper, people always talk about the package you gave up and they gave up a lot. When you give up minor leaguers, you think you gave up a lot or a little. We don't know. Until the guys perform or don't in the majors, I don't know what they gave up. I know they gave up minor leaguers who have never played in the majors or whatever. I know the Guardians didn't give up any highly touted prospects. I'll be honest, I never even heard of the guy they traded for Alex Cobb. I never even heard of that guy.
Nobody in their grand scheme of the prospect pool.
So that's fine. But supposedly the Guardians made an offer for Jack Flaherty. They felt like they made a better offer than the Dodgers did. The way that situation, there's a lot of rumblings around the league that the Tigers screwed themselves on the Jack Flaherty situation, that they were trying to rake team. Once the Kikuchi trade happened, and the industry felt like the Astros made a major overpay for Kikuchi. Once that happened, the Tigers thought they should get even more for Flaherty, which makes sense because Flaherty's better than Kikuchi. And they were holding up teams for a lot. This is what I've heard. And in the end, they were holding the bag because a lot of teams said, no thanks, no thanks, no thanks. And the Dodgers were basically like, here, take it or leave it.
Right.
And listen, the reason the Cobb move is risky is not because you gave up anything.
Just
it's risky because your biggest hole was your starting pitching, and the only guy you acquired is coming off a major injury late in his career.
Hasn't pitched this year, and he's back.
That's right. Now he's pitched in the minors, and
but hasn't thrown major league innings.
Correct. Now the reports are he's looked good in the minors. Okay, that's fine. That's good. That's promising. If you had traded for a Jack Flaherty or a pitcher better than Alex Cobb, then you give the Alex Cobb grade. I give it like a B- or a C, or like a C+. I give it a C+, because it was the only pitching move they made. If they had traded for Jack Flaherty or another good pitcher, then I would have given the Cobb move an A. Because if it was their second pitcher, then I love it. Then it's a great move because it's additional. You're now going to be relying. The hope is you want 4 starters in the playoffs. So you're hoping the 4 starters you're going to be relying on are Tanner Bybee, who's pitched a year and change, Gavin Williams, who's pitched a year and change and has missed some time with injury, Ben Lively, who's been fantastic but has never been good before this year, and Alex Cobb, who's coming off an injury. You're nervous about all of them to some degree.
It's risky.
Now, if it works, the Guardians can win it all. People saying today the Guardians can't win the World Series are stupid.
Yeah.
You're wrong. And let me tell you something else. The Yankees and Orioles also, like the Guardians, got better at the trade deadline. But like the Guardians, neither of those teams, and I know Jazz Chisholm is off to a great start for the Yankees. He's hit 4 home runs in his first 3 or 4 games, whatever, since he's been there. Nice job. He has not had a particularly great season. He didn't have a particularly great season last year. He might be sensational for the Yankees. It's a great ballpark. He's, I don't love their lineup outside of Judge and Soto, but there's sometimes guys get the... It's funny with the Yankees. There's some guys that go there and get that Yankee boost. And there's some guys that go there that can't handle playing for the Yankees. He might be one of those guys that gets kind of jazzed up, if you will, playing for the Yankees, right?
Get warmed up here, boy.
Right? Neither the Yankees or the Orioles made a move that you're like, wow, they got way better.
They didn't get Skubal. They didn't get Flaherty.
So am I going to kill the Guardians today? No. We said they had to make moves. I tweeted they got to get a starting pitcher, and 10 minutes later they traded for Alex Cobb. Was he my first choice? No. I wasn't even thinking about Alex Cobb because he'd been hurt all year. He was off my radar. I like him. I've always liked him. I think he's a good pitcher if he's healthy. If 3 or 4 starts in, he looks healthy, all good. But I would have still liked them to either get another starter or reliever and maybe even a shortstop. They should bring up Kyle Manzardo today. As for the Lane Thomas deal, I don't want to go into it too long because you've talked about it. I talked about it on the Guardian show this morning. I like that move a lot. Zach and I were talking about it. I would play him nearly every day. I'd sit him against very tough righties. He is elite against lefties. Now, he's had enough at-bats against righties that we know he's league average. Could he get better? Sure, he's still young enough. Unlike some of the other guys, the Guardians, he reminds me, he's a better version. You may remember in 2016 when the Indians went to the World Series. They acquired, obviously the big trade was Andrew Miller, but they also made a trade for a right-handed hitter named Brandon Guyer from Tampa Bay who killed lefties. Now, this guy is similar, but he's better because he does other things. He's a good defender, although his metrics are not great this year. He, I believe, has more assists in the outfield than anybody.
He's got a cannon.
He's got a cannon in the outfield. He is third, I think, in the majors in stolen bases. A lot of caught stealings, too.
Aggressive, though.
But he fits what they do. They're a very aggressive team on the base.
So explain to, when you talk about all these things, why is it that, they gave up on him? Because they didn't trade a lot for him either.
Well, Alex Clemmy's a decent prospect.
He's second round pick last year.
And he's an outfielder who's a good player, not a great player.
On a bad team.
On a bad team. They were ready to move on, give some young guys. They have some young outfielders on their team. They're ready to get an opportunity. So they got a pitcher that they think, obviously they think highly of Alex Clemmy. They think he's going to be good. So we'll see.
And Jose Tena, the infielder
they got Jose Tena
is another guy that
he has some potential, and they might have him up in the big leagues this year. He's been in the big leagues. So, Lane Thomas hit for a ton of power last year. The power's down. His walks are up this year. His strikeout rate is down. I think he'll be great against lefties. I like that they hit him second. When he's in the lineup, I bat him second, even against righties, even though he's not as good against righties. Like I said, I would have traded Will Brennan or Tyler Freeman and tried to get another pitcher. Overall, solid trade deadline. Not killing the team today. They did enough to keep the fans in the mix. Mm-hmm. Not enough to get us overly excited, but they didn't drop the ball. So, in between.
Before the deadline, the Guardians were contenders.
Yeah.
They had the second best record in baseball. After the last 2 wins, they actually now have the best record in baseball.
Yeah.
They got better with the 2 deadline acquisitions. No matter the gravity and how much better, we can debate.
Yeah.
But there's no argument the Guardians are better today than they were 48 hours ago prior to the Lane Thomas acquisition and the Alex Cobb acquisition. The Guardians are putting a lot of stock into those 2 players in particular.
Yeah.
Refining their 2023 form, where Lane Thomas hit 28 home runs,
right,
where Alex Cobb pitched at an all-star level. He tailed off towards the end of the season, but the first half of the season last year for San Francisco, he was one of the better pitchers in the National League. When you look at the proverbial power rankings in the American League, you can't mention the top 2 without putting the Guardians either 1 or 2. And you could try and talk yourself into the Yankees, but the Guardians, for what they've done through the first 110 games of the season, have solidified a spot in that top 2, and the acquisitions they made, Bull, although risky and certainly have downside if they don't pan out, put them in a better position to compete with the Baltimores, with the New Yorks, with whoever else they'll face in the playoffs than they were beforehand. So I wish they did a little more, but they did enough to satisfy the basic needs of this team needs improvements. Okay, they needed a power-hitting outfielder. Okay, you need to start a pitcher. You got it. Even if it wasn't the A-ball sky in the prize in the sky that we may have wanted, they did enough.
And unlike the Cavaliers, you do ultimate Cavs. These are the moves that you need to make to catch teams. They felt like, hey, look, we wanted to keep up with Baltimore. We want to keep up with the Yankees. And I said yesterday, look, man, the Guardians have an opportunity to move into that 2 spot in the city. And I think they did just enough to do that because they're showing me that they're conscious of fixing some of the holes and being ultra competitive and making their team better.
It'd be interesting to see the crowds. Crowds have been big. You got an awesome series this weekend against the Orioles after a day off today. 4-game week. Their schedule is really tough the rest of the way. There's going to be a lot of great games. You got a 7-game homestand, 4 against Baltimore, 3 against Arizona, which is really exciting coming up before they go to Minnesota, and then the Cubs come to town. The only team under 500 they're playing in the next, I think, all of August.
That's pivotal. And the Minnesota series is very pivotal.
They have a 6.5 game lead over both Minnesota and Kansas City right now. And as you said, Mike, the biggest concern I had going into the trade deadline was that the Yankees or Orioles would get a superstar pitcher, and neither of them did. The Yankees got a nice relief pitcher, Mark Leiter Jr. from the Cubs. I like him. Most people don't know him that well. He's under the radar. He's very good.
Chisholm was a good addition.
And Jazz Chisholm was a good addition. The Orioles added a bunch of fringe guys, kind of like the Guardians did. They added more guys like that. But they didn't add anybody great. Zach Eflin is, he's like Alex Cobb, but healthy. I mean, I think Cobb's a little better if healthy, but they're similar level. They brought in Eloy Jimenez yesterday, who at one point was a top prospect in the Cubs system, but he's been a huge bust in Chicago. He never stays healthy.
Yeah, Trevor Rogers.
They traded for Trevor Rogers. They gave up one of their better prospects for him. I don't think he's very good. So they had, and their biggest weakness also was their bullpen, and they brought in some guys, but nobody great.
Yeah, no one's going to blow you away.
So I don't think the Orioles improved that much. I did like the addition of Chisholm and Leiter for the Yankees, but listen, Power rankings don't matter. Here's the only power ranking that matters when we're 110 games into the season. Who's got the best record? That's the Guardians.
The Guardians.
They're the best team in the American League. I don't want to hear that the Orioles are better. The Guardians have a better record. And it's not even like you say, well, they're division. Okay, you play more games in your division, but it's not like it used to be where it's a huge amount. The Guardians are playing, you play every team. And by the end of the year, the Guardians will, you look at the rest of the schedule. They have 3 games left with the White Sox.
I have their next
They have
8
none
series.
left with the Tigers. They have none left with Oakland. They're only playing 3 games against terrible teams.
These are their next 8 series. You
Yeah.
ready for this? Home versus Baltimore.
Yeah.
Home versus Arizona, who
Yeah.
made the World Series last year. Head to Minnesota. Home versus the Cubs. On the road at Milwaukee. On the road against the Yankees.
Yeah.
At home for the Rangers. At home for the Royals.
And they don't play the Dodgers after that?
I only went the next 8. So
I
maybe
believe it's
even
the
more.
Dodgers
but
after that. Maybe they play the White Sox and then the Dodgers. Okay, the Cubs, I believe, are the only team they're playing in the next month that's under 500.
Milwaukee is above, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're first place.
Yeah.
The Cubs are the worst team there, and they're not terrible. They're just below average.
Can't hit.
So they're not playing any terrible teams the entire month of August. They're playing one not good team, and then 7 teams that are good or better. So you're going to be challenged here. I'm excited to see it. I'm very excited about this Orioles series. They beat the Orioles the last time they played them. They won that series. They just beat the Phillies in a 3-game series. They finally took care of business against a bad team with Detroit. I think there's a lot. If you're negative today, I get it. We all wanted them to do more, but nobody else did more. None of the superstar pitchers were traded, and they have the best record. And I don't know how you can be that upset today.
Yeah, I don't think you can get negative. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, people will be. People will.
well, look, yesterday they got a bat. I was thinking they was getting one person. The Guardians ain't never went and got went out and got 2-3 dudes at the trade deadline. Like that,
Not since 2016.
Not since 2016. Like, so when they got the bat, I was like, man, this might be over.
Call up Kyle Manzardo today.
Yeah.
Get him up here.
Yeah, we might get a picture. They got an arm. It might not be the name you want, but they did what they needed to do.
I would be fascinated to know how many players of a bigger stature, whether it be Flaherty, who I do believe the Guardians were in on, or Fetty or whoever, Chris Antonelli and Mike Chernoff made legitimate offers for, and either got outbid and/or were told, okay, we're not going to listen unless the package starts with player X. And how many guys they were actually in on but didn't feel that the value in terms of prospects they had to give up was equal to the player they were getting in return. Because, sometimes we could say, hey, go get Skubal or go get, but if Detroit's asking for your top 7 guys, you're not going to make that.
I would have given up anything
but
for Skubal. Anything. But I don't think they would have traded him.
You get my premise of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing out names and hypotheticals here. How many guys were they actually in on? Or did they go into this deadline saying, we're not touching our top 6, 7, 8, 9 guys. Clemmy's the best guy we're going to trade. What can we get for this, as opposed to, okay, we actually are interested in players X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But you want
I don't know that we'll ever get an answer to that question.
I'm just curious to know how they approach the deadline.
And since we know, now I'm transitioning, since we know that these young guys that are on the roster that have been playing, they're going to still continue to be here. Is it too early to start saying, okay, well, who's making, I assume they're going to be in the postseason. Which one of these guys do you see snatching the lion's share of the minutes at certain positions? And is it too early to be like, who's making a postseason roster? Because they got a lot of guys. We talked about, you just said over Martinez. You got Noel, you got Schneemann, you got
4 guys for 2 infielder spots, essentially.
Right.
Schneemann, Martinez,
Rocchio,
Freeman, and Rocchio. Martinez and Freeman, I kept saying the same.
Yeah.
You got those 3 for kind of 2 spots, and then you got right field to deal with in your own right.
Right.
And then Manzardo should be called up. I 100% agree, and he needs to be getting consistent at bats. I don't feel you could kind of play him and not play him, and not play him.
If they call him up, he's not going to play against lefties when they call him up. This is not going to happen. But what I think they're going to do is, this is what Zach suggested this morning on the Guardian show, and I agree with him. You play Lane Thomas. Lane Thomas is going to play every game versus a lefty. He's going to play against some righties. Okay? He's going to play right field. What you do is, against the tough righties, you play either David Fry or Jockenzie Noel in right field.
And let Manzardo DH?
Against the righties, and you have Manzardo DH.
So Will Brennan's out the mix.
Well, he's in the minors. He got sent down.
Yeah.
Will Brennan's out of the mix.
Yeah.
He's out of the mix.
He's out of the mix. All right? Tyler Freeman is pretty much out of the mix. I think Angel Martinez is going to play most of the time in center field. I think they're going to live with Rocchio as the shortstop.
Arias is out of the mix.
Arias is out of the mix.
Okay.
Can Freeman play short? I know he played third last night.
Yeah, I mean.
Or third 2 nights ago. I don't know.
Not really. I don't think they're going to use him there. I think Rocchio's going to play short even with his lack of hitting. I think it's unfortunate. I think Zach and I talked about calling up Jose Tena.
They just traded him.
I mean, not Jose Tena. I just forgot their other. They got so many minor league infield.
They got 96 seconds.
I'm drawing a blank.
Vazana?
No.
Yeah.
Well, that would be great.
Thank you.
That would be great. But let's give him a little time. Anyway,
hyping up G. Bush here.
I would call up Manzardo and I would DH him against righties right away. And then I would play, Fry's playing most of the time, obviously.
Where does Schneeman fit into this?
I think Schneeman's more of a utility guy. Yeah.
So he's going to make the postseason roster, you believe?
I would have Fry. To me, Fry, I use Fry between catcher, DH, and right field. Depending on who else I'm playing that day. I play Manzardo against most righties. I play Fry almost every day. Move him around between catcher, DH, and right field.
Well,
right? I have Bo Naylor, who does most of the catching against righties.
Well, they don't keep Hedges.
Yeah, Hedges.
Hedges stays as the third catcher.
But I'm saying that in that case, Fry would be DH most often.
So you're third, right? But Hedges shouldn't start at all.
Yeah,
I wouldn't start Hedges at all, or almost never. So to me, you're going to have 13 hitters, right, for most of the way. So obviously you have Kwan, you have Martinez, you have Lane Thomas is basically your starting outfield.
Okay.
You should have Manzardo and Naylor, that's 5. Jimenez, Rocchio, 7. Ramirez and Fry is 9. Naylor and Hedges, 11. Schneeman, 12. And then who did I leave out? Freeman? There's your 13th. Oh, and
Noel.
And Joe Kenzie Noel.
Yeah.
That's it. I get Freeman. I move on. Freeman, I call up Manzardo. I send down Freeman because they really have. I'd rather get rid of Rocchio, but Rocchio plays a great defensive shortstop. If I'm hitting everywhere else, I can live with a weak hitting defensive shortstop, at least for this year. And that's it. And then I play Noel. He's going to play a little. Hedges will not play much. I play Noel once in a while, and I use Manzardo against righties. Okay. I sit Lane against the tough righties. You mix and match a little bit.
You have flexibility with that.
Yeah,
too.
Right, exactly.
Because Schneeman can play all the positions.
I think those are the 13 guys that are my core. Hedges stinks, but there is something apparently to him.
You got to keep him.
I would just not use. I would almost never play him, but I keep him on the roster. And there you go. And then listen, if it's the biggest if, but if Bybee, Williams, Lively, and Cobb are healthy and pitching well, and they've all pitched. Lively and Bybee have pitched very well.
Williams pitched better last
very well his last start. If Cobb can be healthy, I expect him to pitch well if he's healthy. They could win the World Series. The team is good enough because they have just enough hitting. They have the defense. They have the base running. They have the bullpen. If the starting pitching is solid, it doesn't need to be great. If it's solid, they can win the World Series. They can.
If they could get those 4 guys, I would put them. The starting pitching would be from the playoff teams. I would say the starting pitching would probably be 3rd or 4th out of the teams that would be in it. I mean, the hitting would be. I would say is probably 3rd or 4th. Bullpen is number 1,
no doubt.
Defensively, I think that they're top 1.
Defensively, number 1. Base running, number 1.
Yeah.
Bullpen, number 1. Yeah, they're not number 1 starting or hitting, but it's just got to be good enough.
Just good enough. I said yesterday, I think the Guardians bullpen is the single best unit of any unit, lineup, starting rotation, or bullpen in baseball. So out of the 90 possible units, I think the Guardians bullpen is the number 1 unit in baseball.
Maybe take the Orioles offense, but it's right there.
I'd still take the Guardians bullpen. But going back to Cobb in the playoffs, he's made 2 career playoff starts. Do you remember?
13 years ago. The first one, I was at the game. It was the wild card game against the Guardians.
And
they were
against the Indians. He pitched terrific.
He pitched great. The starting pitcher for the Indians that day was Danny Salazar. It was my first playoff game after moving to Cleveland. I had been here 2 years. It was electric that night at the stadium. It was great. It was a great night.
That was the play-in game, wasn't it? It was a wild card against the Rays. Didn't they lose?
They lost.
Yeah,
They lost, and he pitched again in the
Cobb pitched
divisional
great.
series
And
against
he
the Red Sox and pitched pretty
Pitched
good.
okay, but he hasn't been in the playoffs since.
It was 2013. He has
Yeah.
not pitched in the postseason in 11 years.
Yeah.
However, he's pitched a ton of games.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the moment would be too big for a guy like that who just has that plethora of experience.
Yeah.
He's pitched in the bigs now for 12 seasons. Like, he is no stranger to big moments and big playoff runs.
I'm not worried
and
about
such.
him.
Yeah.
He's
I'm
a
not worried either.
grinder. He's a grinder. He'll be fine. As in terms of the way they played on the field, they had been playing lousy for a few weeks. Nice these last 5 days.
Nice bounce back.
They took 2 or 3 from the Phillies. They swept the Tigers. Overall, they've won 6 of 8. So they seem to be right in the ship. They've been hitting better lately. They need the
Jose.
The problem was that all their superstars went into a slump. It was the first time all season for a few weeks there that all their best hitter, I shouldn't say all the superstars. They have one superstar, Jose Ramirez. They have 2 other legitimate all-stars in Quan and Naylor, and then Fry, who was an all-star this year. All 4 of them were not playing well. Quan's batting average went down.
He doesn't even lead the league anymore.
Nope. Bobby Witt Jr. has been great. But I expect them all to bounce back. I expect them all to pitch well, hit well, and hopefully we're going to have a big stretch run. We got 55 games left, I think. I believe the Guardians have to go, I think it's 55 games left. They have to go 35-20 to win 100 games. That's not easy, but they played better than that this year.
And at that
35-20,
at
they'll win 100
one point in
games.
time, I had them for winning 103, 104 games.
I think they're going to win between 97 and 100. By the way, bring that graphic up for a second, because this is a little stat people may or may not care about, but I'll share it with you. The Chicago White Sox have a chance to have the worst record in the modern era of Major League Baseball. So forget the turn of the century, all that nonsense early. Teams were in and out of the league. Since we've gone to a 162-game schedule, right, the modern era, the worst record ever in one season was the expansion 1962 Mets. Now, for some reason, they only played 160 games that year instead of 162. But the 1962, remember, there was an expansion team. They went 40-120, worst winning percentage in the modern era of Major League Baseball. The White Sox are 27-83. So they have to win 41 games to avoid having the worst winning percentage in the modern era of baseball. They have played 110 games. That means they have 52 games left. So to avoid that, they have to go 14-36, which means they have to win about a third of their games. I don't think they're going to do that.
That's crazy.
They have lost 16 in a row and 19 of 20.
I saw a stat.
I think they're going to be the first team in the modern era to not win 40 games.
It's absurd.
Crazy.
They haven't won in almost 3 weeks now. Like 3 weeks of real time.
Why didn't you just do the same thing with FanDuel with the A's you did with the White Sox this year?
Well, that's true.
I should have. Yeah.
Remember I think it was July 3rd, the White Sox beat the Guardians. Eric Fetty pitched for the White Sox. Yep. The White Sox have won 2 games since then. 2 games since July 3rd. That's 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's absurd.
So anyway, but there were some other teams at the trade deadline that did some weird things. The Cubs kind of did an old Guardians move of buying and selling.
At the same time.
I don't know why the Rockies didn't, why didn't the Rockies trade Cal Quantrill? He's a free agent. I don't understand what they're doing. I don't understand why the A's didn't trade Brent Rooker. I don't know what they're doing, but anyway, there you go. But good 4 out of 5 and 6 out of 8 for the Guardians.
One last thing on
exciting series with the Orioles. Can't
the
wait.
game last night.
Yeah.
I know it's 2 starts against Detroit.
Yeah.
And I know their lineup is by no means world beaters.
Yeah.
Gavin Williams is starting to round into form
It's
here.
promising. I don't like that he only went 5 innings as dominant as he was. The pitch count's too high. It's something he's got to work on.
I know it's not
but
perfect.
But it was a very encouraging start. He pitched very well.
And he